In recent months, Nigeria has found itself standing at a crossroad in its labor history. The unfolding events surrounding the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and its president, Joe Ajaero, have captured the attention of both national and international observers. The peaceful processions currently being organized by the NLC across the country, expressions of solidarity for their president under police interrogation, are far more than just routine demonstrations. They signal a deeper struggle that touches on the rights of workers, the power of organized labor, and the larger dynamics between the Nigerian state and its citizens. To understand the gravity of this situation, we must first delve into the underlying cause. Joe Ajaero, the leader of the NLC, is being interrogated by the police, a development which the union interprets as a direct attempt to intimidate and possibly incapacitate the leadership of Nigeria's labor movement. In response, the NLC has threatened an indefinite strike if Ajaero is detained, an ultimatum that the government should not take lightly. The threat of an indefinite strike is not something that arises in isolation. It is the result of years of accumulated frustration on the part of Nigerian workers who have long felt marginalized, underappreciated, and increasingly burdened by economic difficulties. In a nation with a vast working population that grapples with rising inflation, high unemployment rates, and a widening wealth gap, the role of organized labor becomes even more critical. In many ways, labor unions in Nigeria serve as the last line of defense for the working class, ensuring that their grievances are not just swept under the rug. The NLC's history of advocating for workers' rights is well documented. Since its formation, the Congress has been instrumental in championing the cause of workers across multiple sectors. It has helped push through wage increases, secured better working conditions, and fought against policies that would harm ordinary Nigerians. But now, with its leader facing potential detention, the NLC has to ask itself how far it is willing to go to defend its leadership, and by extension, the broader labor movement. To truly appreciate the current mobilization, it is necessary to place it within the context of Nigeria's historical relationship with labor unions. The labor movement in Nigeria has long been a force to be reckoned with, dating back to the pre-independence era. During the colonial period, Nigerian workers, particularly in industries such as railways, mining, and dock work, were subjected to harsh conditions, low pay, and little to no benefits. It was during these times that the seeds of labor organizations were planted, with the earliest unions forming in response to colonial exploitation. Nigerian workers, whether in public or private sectors, are already stretched thin. The post-colonial era saw an explosion in the power and influence of labor unions. They become major players in the political landscape, not just advocating for workers' rights, but also challenging the policies of successive governments, both civilian and military. Labor unions were at the forefront of many key political struggles, from opposing military dictatorships to demanding democratic governance. This rich history of activism is something that governments must consider carefully. Any attempt to weaken or undermine the unions could be met with fierce resistance, leading to a larger political confrontation that extends far beyond the current conflict over Joe Ajaero's interrogation. The relationship between the Nigerian government and labor unions is inherently complex. On one hand, labor unions represent the interests of millions of workers who contribute significantly to the economy. On the other hand, the government has its own economic agenda, which often involves implementing policies that are unpopular with the working class, such as the removal of fuel subsidies, reconstructing of public institutions, or austerity measures. When these two factors clash, the consequences can be far-reaching. A labor strike, particularly an indefinite one, has the potential to disrupt the economy in profound ways. We have seen this before in Nigeria's history. Strikes in education, healthcare, and oil sectors have brought the country to a standstill, forcing the government to reconsider its policies. This power of labor to influence policy through mass mobilization is precisely what makes the current situation so precarious. We are all feeling the squeeze from rising inflation, the impact of fuel price hikes, and other economic challenges. Nigeria's economy is already under strain. With inflation on the rise, many families find themselves struggling to afford basic necessities. Unemployment, particularly among young people, is alarmingly high. The removal of fuel subsidies, a decision that has sparked widespread protest, has only deepened the economic woes of many Nigerians, increasing the cost of transportation and food. In such a climate, the threat of a nationwide strike is a ticking bomb. If the NLC carries out its threats, the resulting economic paralysis could plunge the country into a more deeper crisis, exacerbating poverty and social unrest. Beyond the direct economic impact, a prolonged strike would have severe consequences for essential services. In Nigeria, labor unions represent workers across a variety of sectors, including healthcare, education, transportation, and public utilities. A strike that affects these sectors could have disastrous effects, particularly on the most vulnerable populations. Hospitals could be understaffed, schools could be closed, and the transportation networks could grind to a halt. For the millions of Nigerians who rely on these services, a strike would not just be an inconvenience, it could be life-threatening. Take the healthcare sector, for example. Nigeria's healthcare system is already struggling to meet the needs of its population. A strike by healthcare workers could exacerbate the crisis, leaving patients without access to critical care. The education sector would be heavily impacted. With many schools already facing challenges due to underfunding and lack of resources, a strike could further disrupt the education of millions of students. The long-term effect of such disruptions could be felt for years to come, particularly among disadvantaged communities. Politically, the current standoff between the NLC and the government would have far-reaching consequences. Labor unions have always been a key player in Nigeria's political landscape, and their ability to mobilize large numbers of people gives them significant leverage. If the government mishandles the situation, it could face a larger political crisis. The perception that the government is attempting to silence or weaken labor unions could fuel further unrest, not just among workers, but also among other groups that feel marginalized or oppressed. Moreover, the government's response to this crisis will be watched closely by other organizations and movements within Nigeria. If the government is seen as heavy-handed or authoritarian in its approach, it could embolden other groups to challenge the state. This is particularly important in a country as diverse and politically complex as Nigeria, where regional, ethnic, and religious tensions often run high. A miscalculation by the government could ignite wider social and political unrest, with consequences that could be difficult to control. Given the potential for escalation, it is crucial that both the government and NLC find a way to resolve the conflict peacefully and constructively. Dialogue should be the primary tool for resolving disputes of this nature. The government must be willing to engage with labor unions in a meaningful way, addressing their concerns and working towards compromises that protect the rights of workers while also ensuring the stability of the economy. One possible pathway to resolution could involve the establishment of an independent mediation body, tasked with facilitating negotiations between the government and the NLC. Such a body could help to de-escalate tensions, ensuring that both sides have a fair and neutral platform to express their concerns. In addition, the government could take steps to reassure the labor movements that it respects their rights and will not resort to intimidation or repression. This could involve publicly affirming the right to protest, ensuring that the labor leaders are not unjustly targeted by the police, and demonstrating a commitment to addressing the economic issues that have fueled much of the discontent. Ultimately, the future of workers' rights in Nigeria depends on the willingness of both the government and the labor movement to engage in constructive dialogue. This is not just about Joe Ajaero or the NLC. It's about the broader relationship between the state and its citizens. Workers in Nigeria deserve to have their voices heard and their rights respected. But at the same time, the government have a responsibility to ensure the stability of the country and the well-being of its people. In conclusion, the labor mobilization currently taking place in Nigeria is a reflection of deeper societal issues. The standoff between the NLC and the government over Joe Ajaero's interrogation is a critical moment for the future of workers' rights in the country. The decisions made in the coming days and the weeks have profound consequences, not just for the labor movement, but also for Nigeria as a whole. The stakes are high, and both sides must tread carefully. If handled properly, this crisis could be an opportunity for growth, dialogue, and reform. If mishandled, it could lead to greater division, unrest, and economic instability. The future is uncertain, and one thing is clear: the labor movement in Nigeria is not going away, and its demands for justice and fairness will continue to shape the country's political landscape for years to come. My name is Chidera Anabogo, reporting for DDM News.